really happy that after COVID, after 2 years of remote sessions, remote conferences, and so on, we are back. So we are back here, back together, and we are exactly in the same place where we were 5 years ago. So first of all, thanks to CodeNode for hosting us again after so many years. And we are really glad to be here again. It's a wonderful location, and yeah, the people here are just lovely. And thanks GerritForge for for organizing and sponsoring the event, and thanks everyone else in the community. And of course, to put together this event and to put the agenda and make it happen, we use one tool that is Gerrit. And also the website of the summit is run by Gerrit. And again, we review that we cooperated thanks to Gerrit for organizing this Gerrit event. So we do dog foodie with everything, even the events. So if Gerrit doesn't work, we can't even really do it events. And so for whoever doesn't know me, I'm a maintainer, been a maintainer for actually 5 years. I became maintainer in 2017 for the summit. I'm member of the Gerrit Engineering Steering Committee for the guys that don't know what is the ESC. So if you don't know, I'm going to tell you now that the project was not founded by us, was founded by Sean Pierce, and he passed away. Instead of electing a new leader, we decided to work in a democratic way. So it means the community every year, they define a steering committee, so a reduced number of people, because if you want to make a decision, you cannot make a decision with 150 people or 1,000 people. You need to do a small election we do every year. And on this election, there is a percentage of, let's say, the small committee based on Google, and the others are from the rest of the community. And I've been part of the ESC for 3 years so far. So just let's talk about GerritForge a little bit. We are now a US company, and also for current and future customer, we don't engage anymore with the UK company, and the UK company is gonna, let's say, transfer everything to the US. Okay, so the talk is about what's new in 3.6 and 3.7, and you may guess why on earth is Luca talking about 3.4 and 3.5? And we have a site that is called GitHub Analytics, GitHub.io. What we do is basically for the projects they want, so we could do for the Q project as well, if you want to, we crunch analytics. So we do for Gerrit code review, and we do for other projects as well. And based on that, we basically tell to the open source community that that's your numbers. This is what you guys do, how many people you have got, how much they're active, which project they're working on, and so on. And because as a company, we do everything open source, also this is open source. So if you want to do on your setup, you install a plugin that is called the Analytics plugins. You got this, right, on your Gerrit. If you think about that 3.4 and 3.5, they were supposed to be in maintenance mode. We fix bugs if they're really important, right? If they are minor bugs, we don't fix them on 3.4, 3.5, unless they've got some significance. And we typically fix it, let's say, on master or maybe the latest version, right? But here there is an exception. And the reason behind the exception are those two pie charts that you see on the right. So you see on the left side, the contributions on Gerrit core, and on the right side, the contributions on plugins. If you see, there is a company that typically was not very active in contributions, but has stepped up a lot, the efforts, and this is really good, and that is Qualcomm. So in the past, they've been contributing a lot, and then there have been a moment where they were not contributing that much, but in 3.4 and 3.5, they started contributing massively. If you look, for instance, on the plugin side, so we contributed 50% of the commits, but Qualcomm contributed 20%, which is big. And Qualcomm contributed even more than Google on those two releases, the patch releases, yeah, not the initial release. And on the left side is still Google on core, of course, but Qualcomm is significant. And this is very unusual, right? Typically, we don't do so many changes on a stable release. The number of commits are also matching a major release. And that's a very important information for you guys, because it means if you get a patch release on 3.4 or 3.5, you need to consider it as an upgrade, not just a patch release. Typically in Gerrit, you will say, oh, it's a patch release, I will just put the new war, restart, I don't do much testing. Do a lot of testing here, because there are lots of changes. And also, if you are on an older patch release of 3.4 and 3.5, before upgrading further, make sure that you go to the latest patch release, because imagine that you are on 3.4.1, and the latest one we release is 3.4.8. It's not a patch upgrade, it's kind of a major upgrade. And before going to 3.5, it's better if you upgrade first to 3.4.8. So you get the latest version, and then you just get the delta from that version to 3.05. But just to give kudos of all the work they've done there, they made fantastic optimizations. They make some radical changes as well. There is actually more changes on 3.4, 3.5 than the entire 3.6. So just to give you the scale, so that's why I treat it as a major upgrade, because from 3.4.0 to 3.4.8 is a major upgrade. Do regression testing, upgrade of plugins, test the plugins properly because the API changes, the way the queries are executed are changing, so the performance is changing as well. So 3.6, again, as you can see, Google is definitely the largest contributor in Gerrit Core, and Wikimedia is the second, but when I say Wikimedia, it's just basically one guy that is really productive, that is called Paradox, and then we got GerritForge in terms of Gerrit Core. With the plugins, is actually the picture is completely reversed because we work mainly on plugins. Plugins, they are very popular, that people use, and we wanted to talk about, for instance, with Tony, the health check is a very, very useful plugin. And also, if you look at the numbers, you see 1,600 commits in Gerrit Core and over 1,000 in plugins. So there is a, I would say, equivalent order magnitude of contributions there. Regards to plugin, of course, we are not the only ones. Also, Google contributes a lot on plugins. I believe they did recently a lot of activities on the Code Owners plugin, for instance. And also, they develop lots of plugins for the other Gerrit servers they maintain. Okay, let's go to 3.7. So, as you can see, 3.7 is a lot smaller than 3.6. And you see, first of all, there are a lot less changes in Gerrit Core and a lot less changes also in the JGit stack and Gerrit plugins. But I have to say that 3.7 was just born last night. Okay, and here just to give you the kudos of those are the top 10 individual contributors. So I'm not talking about companies, but individuals that contributed the most commits on the overall Gerrit project. And I would like to give kudos to people that they were not in this list before. So for instance, with Chris Pusha, it was not there, so it's a new entry. Well done. Frank, I believe it was a new entry as well. Luca, no, I've been there for a while. Tony, you are in the top 10 contributors. Well done. Let's do a clap for the other guys as well. They're not here, but Yusuf, but I have to say, as you can see, and this is really a symptom of a very healthy open source project, 33% of all commits have been done by so many other people. They are not these ones. And this is really a good symptom. When I see an open source project and I see that one guy wrote 95% of the commits and the other 1,000 guys wrote the 5% of the commits, then I'm typically scared because what happens if that guy, I don't know, wins the lottery, right? And then the project say, yeah, we are 1,000, but we know 5% of the code base. Here, I have to say that even the top contributor, Edwin, that has been there for ages, in the last 12 months, he contributed just 11% to the commits. So it means there is really a huge community, cooperative community, and vibrant. And top organizations, the last 12 months. So kudos to Google, 63%. GerritForge is still there, 14, but I'm really happy that we see Qualcomm as well. For whatever reason, they changed the domain. So when you see Linaro, this is Qualcomm. And then, of course, kudos to SAP as well, because we include also JGit in this picture. And Wikimedia, again, this is Paradox. One of the major feedback and even critics that we receive from the community is that we do great stuff, but upgrading is always a pain. And they listed many things. But this time I wanted to give some help to the rest of the community and not just talking about how the upgrade works, but showing how the upgrade works and explaining in details. Because it's not useful if we do a new release and people don't know how to upgrade to the new release. And unfortunately, not all releases are the same. Some releases are easier to upgrade, others are not so easy. For instance, we are mentioning possibly the most difficult one is 2.16, the conversion between ReviewDB and NodeDB. And I believe, yeah, Jose will talk about actually a real life story of his experience as a user of Gerrit, and definitely that is an issue. Also on the mailing list, sometimes there is a little bit of confusion of what's the approach. So now I tried always in the release notes to make it very separate because there are two different paths. I'm going to do the same here. So you can either choose the zero downtime online upgrade. So it means that you don't have to tell people you're upgrading. So traffic continues to operate exactly as before. Nobody's going to realize anything, but you get upgraded. But yeah, Paul, for instance, is using GerritHub for his project, and he just sees that there is a new version of Gerrit, but he doesn't really receive any notifications, such as, we have a planned maintenance of GerritHub IO this Sunday for 6 hours, so please don't come because we'll be upgrading. We never said that. And we don't give a notice also, because upgrade should be easy, should be transparent. Yeah, and I'm going to show you how to do this type of upgrade. And bear in mind that the rule of thumb is always that you can upgrade online with zero downtime only if you're coming from the previous version. That's the rule. There are exceptions. Sometimes you can skip, but don't take the exception as the rule. So if, for instance, I remember there was 3.5, you could skip from 3.2 to 3.5 straight away, skipping. That doesn't mean that from now on, the community will allow you to go from, I don't know, 2.1 to 3.8. Yeah, no, that doesn't mean that. It means that sometimes there are easy releases because there are less changes on the data structures, or maybe there are less incompatible changes and whatever. But what we guarantee as a community, that whatever changes we do, we always make sure that the previous release, latest patch set of the previous release, is forward compatible with the next release. So in this case, it means if I want to upgrade to 3.6, I'm talking about 3.6 now, and then we'll talk about 3.7, you need to be on the latest version of 3.5. That is 3.5.4, right? David, you remember? Yeah, 3.5.4. We released, I believe, a couple of days ago, that one. And the reason why we said that, because when we release the next version, we make sure to release also all the other versions. So in a way that if there is a bug, we catch the bug beforehand, we fix the previous version to be forward compatible, okay? But if you upgrade from a 3.5.0 to a 3.6.3, for instance, that may not be possible. You need first to go to the latest version of previous version, the latest fix of the previous version. Then in case of 3.6, you need to run a utility. And this utility was written by David and I, and we made sure that you have two versions of this utility. The one that you can use for online, and the one that you can use for offline. So in this case, you run the utility for online. So you install the latest of 3.5, you run a copy approval. I'm going to talk about that, what it is. And when then that one is done, you basically just upgrade Gerrit, restart, job done. If you do with downtime, there could be many reasons for doing with downtime. For instance, I don't know, you promise to your manager, say you can migrate from 2.0 to 3.8 in one go. And then they say, yeah, okay, do it. In that case, you have to do it offline. Because as a community, we don't support, let's say, big jumps. So you need to plan everything by yourself. You need to test it everything by yourself. But the process is much longer. As you can see, it's much bigger. So first, you need to do an upgrade from wherever you are to 3.0. That's the first part. So here I'm talking about just from 3.0 onwards. So it means that if you are in a version with ReviewDB, you will need to get to 2.16, convert into NodeDB, and get to 3.0. When you're in 3.0, you can, basically you're still in Java 8, so you need to go to the latest version that supports still Java 8, that is 3.2, and then move from Java 8 to Java 11, still in 3.2. Then, as I mentioned before, you can do a direct push to 3.5. That's an exception. Typically, you don't do that. In this case, you can. Then you run the copy approval, the offline version. You need to run the offline reindex. This is a sort of production-like setup. Look like this. So there is an HA proxy serving incoming traffic. It's serving both HTTP and SSH. Then there are basically two instances of Gerrit running in high availability. They are both running read and write, so it's not one failover or the other. It's really balancing. They're using a plugin that we developed together with Ericsson. It's called High Availability Plugin that allows you to do this. And then we basically have shared volumes, a shared directory for sessions, and 2 different index volumes for the 2 Gerrit servers. So this is the starting point. And we'll start this one with 3.5. So first, let's have a look at the Docker and Compose file. As you can see, you've got Gerrit 01. They are all built from the same image. So it's exactly, let's say, balancing, just instantiating twice. As you can see, the first instance is mounting the shared directory by different index. And the second, the only difference between the two is the first is mounting index volume 1, the second is mounting index volume 2. And you got HA proxy connecting the two. And then, of course, I manage the volumes that's sharing here with this volume in Docker, right? So those are the volumes that you saw down. The only additional volume that I didn't see in the picture is syslog sidecar, because it's the one that I need to display the logs of HA proxy. So they are running, as you can see. With regards to the ports, so the port 80 is pointing to HA proxy, but I can also access the individual nodes. I'm going to 80, so this is HA proxy. There we go. And let's start creating a repo. I will call it Gerrit User Summit. Okay. Creating this one, and let's start creating a change here. Let's create for master and say welcome back. There we go. Creating, ready to go. Okay. I just created a change because if you start Gerrit with nothing, you're actually not testing the indexing. In this case, I tested indexing, right? And if we want to have a look on what happens behind the scenes here, I'm displaying the logs of both 1 and 2. And as you can see, we are using a health check between the HA proxy and the nodes. And I'm not using the default health check that typically HA proxy does, just reachability and maybe you give static assets. But I'm using a plugin that is called health check plugin. And with Tony, we're going to tell you a real life story that actually happened last week, where thanks to the health check plugin, we avoided a global outage. Okay, so, and let's have a look which version I'm running now. So let me do version here. And I'm running 3.5.4. So, am I on the latest version 3.5? David? Yes, ready to go. So now, let's have a look, sorry. I need to go to the demo, user submit, demo, that's one. Sorry, and get log. So that's the starting point. Okay, now let me go to the first upgrade path, upgrade to 3.6.3. So first of all, I wanted to show you. So first of all, I never do upgrades manually. Always script everything. Never do anything manually, because if you do it manually, who knows? Let's say if you, I don't know, were falling asleep, or maybe you had a bad day, or I don't know, whatever happens, you made a mistake or whatever. Whenever you do an upgrade, just make sure that you script everything, because you can get someone else to review it. And also when you execute the upgrade, just trace everything, all the logs, because there are no perfect upgrades. Even at Gerrit Hub, sometimes we screw up because we make mistakes. And let's say high availability and multi-site are the only ways to avoid global outage when there is a fat finger, because we are not perfect, right? We make mistakes. So if you script it, you have more chances that someone will review it. I need to run the online version of the copy approvals. And I'm going to talk about later what is copy approvals. But it means that Gerrit is up and running, and I'm running an SSH against Gerrit, and I'm calling it copy approvals. Copy approvals is a very heavy operation, and Gerrit Hub IO took many hours, but because you're running it online, and you haven't started the upgrade yet, you can even do, let's say, I don't know, imagine that you want to do it, imagine it takes 2 weeks. Okay, run for 2 weeks. What's the problem? Because it's running on an online version. Then what you need to do is, of course, upgrading your image. In this case, we're using a Docker-based setup of Gerrit. Our Docker file is not very complicated. We just extend the official Docker image. That's it. We say, okay, we want exactly the same Docker image that the community releases, so we don't have to care about Java versions or any fixes, whatever. The community tested this, I want it, yeah? And then we just add on top what we need. In this case, I need some configuration and some plugins. Fine, done. And one thing that is very important when you run Gerrit, remember to run it always as root. So basically when you start Gerrit, if you don't run it as root, Gerrit is not able to adjust the auto memory killer. And then if the operating system is running short on memory, even if it's not Gerrit, the guilty one, the operating system will kill Gerrit. If you run it as root, will adjust the auto memory killer basically score, and then will sudo as Gerrit user. So it means that Gerrit will still run as an untrusted user, but you allowed Gerrit shell to adjust that flag. If you don't adjust that flag, Gerrit works, and maybe one day will crash, you wonder why. That's the reason, right? So this is a demo, but as I mentioned, I wanted to make a demo that is very, very realistic, so something that is similar to what you would do in production. And by doing Docker Compose build, just rebuilding, the only thing that I change is just the version of Gerrit on top. Everything else remains exactly the same. And if you move forward, then what I need to do, okay, that's very important. When you do the rolling restart, even if you're on HA, never kill Gerrit straight away, but first make it an LT. Because if you kill it straight away, of course you are in high availability, but if there is a pending connection to that node, you're going to kill it. And then we use this method because we have tested extensively with Gatling as well, and that's the only way you can make sure that nobody will ever see anything, ever any problem, right? So you make it an LT, then after is an LT, then in this case I put sleep 20. It's not a random number because I know that that's the time for HA proxy to realize that this is an LT, because the HA proxy is not immediate, right? So you make it an LT, and then HA proxy start testing 2-3 times, and then with the 3 times, in this case, there is interval of 5 seconds, 3 times is 15, and make it an LT. And then what I do is basically kill Gerrit, because when I get into this point, I know that nobody is using Gerrit 1. I start it again. I'm waiting for Gerrit 1 to be healthy again, and that's important because you say, I started, now I'm stopping the second, and then you're without nodes, right? Because Gerrit takes some time to be healthy. And healthy here doesn't mean that I can see the GUI. It means that it's working at perfect speed. And then you can do the same with the second. If you remove the health check plugin, of course, becomes unhealthy because there is no health check endpoint. Where do you put it back? Because this one is an immutable deployment. So it means whenever you kill something, if you kill Gerrit, it's immutable. When you start up, start fresh with nothing. And that's the way that you should do it. So in the cloud, and there is going to be a talk by Thomas Trebig tomorrow, when you deploy Gerrit on Kubernetes, do something similar. You don't rely on the state. When you start fresh. So when you start a new Gerrit, health check is there. Because whatever I did on the state of the previous one is gone. When you kill it, it's gone. Okay? Yeah, so the question is the health check built by default? Not exactly, but it's built in my Docker image. So when I show the Docker file, the one that I showed before, and so let's run it. So I'm going here, and once we are running it, once it start going, I'm going to make changes because I want to make sure that I'm writing to Gerrit while the upgrade is happening, because that's the only way that you can afford not telling people that you're upgrading. Because if they see something, then they will start complaining. If they don't notice anything, why should you tell them, right? I'm still working on 3.5.4. Let me start the upgrades. So we'll do Gerrit upgrade to 3.6. There we go. So here is building. And in the meantime, guys, we can put whatever we want. So what do we want to put to this welcome? So some suggestions. ReadMeMD, that's the answer. You see, I don't notice that there is an upgrade going on. Did you notice anything? What is slower? No. Did you see any blockage? Nothing. Okay, I continue. So look, is the upgrade going? Yeah, actually, it was already it did already the Gerrit 1, and now it's doing the Gerrit 2. So let's have a look what was doing in the meantime. So first was making Gerrit 1 and LT. We didn't notice anything. Yeah. Then was doing the SSH for doing the copy approval. We didn't notice anything. Then was killing the Gerrit 1. Then was starting up the Gerrit 1 until it was healthy, and the JSON that you see there is the output of the health check plugin. And then he's doing the same with Gerrit 2 to see if now we are really upgraded. And that's very important. You won't see in the GUI. So because the GUI is in the browser, until I do a full refresh of the page, the GUI is not even cached, does not even call the backend. It's still in the browser. Until I refresh the page, or I close the browser, or whatever, when we make new releases of Gerrit, we make sure that the REST API are compatible with the old GUI. And that's why I said there are exceptions on making jumps, but don't rely on it, because we can't guarantee that, I don't know, 3.7 now is going to be compatible with the Gerrit 5.0. I have no idea what the REST API will look like 5.0. But I can tell you that during the hackathon, we made sure that this works. So if you want to go to a smoother path of upgrade, just go to the path that we checked for you, right? You can explore, of course. There are people that explore it. They'll say, oh, I want to go to the Mont Blanc, but instead of going that way that everyone goes, why don't I go there with the crevasses and whatever? Because I like new experience. That's fine. You can do it if you want. But I don't suggest it, right? So here, we refresh the page. There we go. And we are at 363. And the data is still there. Let's have a look if the index is there. So typically, when you upgrade, the indexes don't work. It's there. The index is there because the search is served by the index. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. Let's see to the next upgrade, 3.7. So there is a difference. So 3.7 has more changes than 3.6. And there is also a schema change. So it is possible only from 3.6. And it doesn't require the copy approval, because that step was done. We'll see why. Again, if you want to do with downtime, it's a lot more painful. So let's have a look how it works. It's easier than the other one, but it's very similar, right? I just don't have the copy approval. Everything else is the same. And let's run it. And then, guys, we need to write something else to this README and run it as one. So what do we want to write to this README? OK, done. Save and publish. Did you see any errors? Do you see any delay? So let's do something else. Let's do -1, and let's continue, and so on. And now it's waiting. You see, Gerrit 1 is down, so now I'm working on Gerrit 2, right? So I do -2, right? And for instance, go to the index, it's still there. You go welcome back, it's still there. And let's have a look. And now it's finished. And so now I'm back on 1. All works as it was before. And if I refresh the page, I'm on 3.7. Yeah? OK? So was it difficult? No. So the good thing this time, compared to the previous upgrades, nobody can say, I don't know how to upgrade. 3.6 first. So first, 3.6 is not compatible anymore with Java 8. So some of the people will be unhappy that we don't support Java 8 anymore. And I say, guy, Java 11 is going into live. So in September next year, we can't use Java 11 anymore. So we have to be on Java 17. We don't distribute it, we don't compile anymore in Java 8. It means that the Gerrit 3.6 code base will not be possible to be built in Java 8. Actually, you can build it with Java 17, because David Ostrowski did all the support for Java 17. And if you want to run 3.6 in Java 17, it is supported as well. The good thing is that Gerrit 3.6 is already ready and production ready for Java 17. And with regards to plugins, so we asked the community to target still Java 11. Because if you do a plugin that runs only on Java 17, Gerrit may be running on Java 11, but if the plugin is not compatible with Java 11, then you're not able to run it. Our CI will make sure that your code is working in Java 11. And we still need to make the Java 17 validator, so maybe we wanted to do it during the hackathon, but we ran out of coffee. That's the problem. So performance improvements. So there are a lot of improvements. And I'm talking about 3.6, but actually they are coming from 3.4 and 3.5, the merge jobs. The reason why you will see a lot mentioning monorepos in these improvements is because GerritForge every year decides what's the focus of the research and the innovation on Gerrit. And the innovation for GerritForge in 2022 is make Gerrit faster, more scalable, more robust for large repos, monorepos, so large setups. And the main reason why we focused on that, because lots of people were moving away from Gerrit because they say, listen, I have a small repo. Why should I use Gerrit? I can use GitLab. And for us, it's not really, it is important to understand why the people with small repos want to go to GitLab, but it is also important to understand why people with large repos should still be happy to stay on Gerrit. So I say, okay, so the user experience guys will understand how to make the user experience of Gerrit better, but because we want to make sure that people that decided to stay on Gerrit, they have the best experience, let's make Gerrit even better for what is best, right? And you will see a lot of improvements there. And that's the same focus of the Qualcomm guys as well, working on 3.4 and 3.5. We introduced a lot of lazy loading. And specifically, we put a lot of lazy loading on the change metadata on 3.6, actually in 3.4 and 3.5 as well. This is because when people moved from ReviewDB to NodeDB, they realized that before, loading metadata was just making a SQL query. Now need to read a pack file from the file system. If Gerrit does it too eagerly, then you blow up the heap. And the user experience is not great. So second performance improvement is on accounts. Accounts is another type of information that changed radically from ReviewDB to NodeDB. So previously, when Gerrit was working with a relational database, loading the account information was again just a SQL query. That's it. It was so easy. But now Gerrit has all the accounts information into a repo that unfortunately, for bad decisions that we made, so we are all guilty, the repo that contains the account also contains all the draft comments of everyone. So it's repo that even if you think is small, actually it's not. There was a customer that realized that his account's repo was something like 60 gigabytes. They say, we don't have so many accounts. How is it possible to go 60 gigabytes? And that's because they had lots of phantom messages and phantom commits there. So being really, really careful when you load the account is paramount for performance. And the Qualcomm guys did extensive testing there and introduced a lot of improvements for instance, processing all queries in order to avoid loading the accounts multiple times. And change labels, this is the copy approvals. So we need to run the copy approvals because before 3.6, the status of the review of a change was the just-in-time merging of all the scores on all the history of a change. Imagine that you had a change with 80 or 100 pet set. And I did it, yeah, even 100 pet set, yeah. Yeah, I did it. The OAuth plugin had something like 100 pet set. When you load the change screen, if you calculate on the fly what's the review status on that one by computing a 100 pet set, it takes some time. So in 3.6, Gerrit says, instead of calculating that every time that the people look at the change screen, and of course, if you go, let's say, 5 people look at the same change screen, you calculate 5 times, the Google guys say, why don't we calculate that information once, and we store the calculated label on the latest patch set. And this is what copy approval does, because in 3.6, basically, this mechanism of automatically, let's say, combining things is not there anymore. It was there in 3.05, but it's not in 3.06. So if you don't run the copy approval command, it is technically working, but then you will see that the changes look different. You say, oh, the change in 3.05 was ready to be submitted, then I migrate to 3.06 and it's not ready to be submitted anymore. What happened? It's not that Gerrit is broken, it just didn't run the copy approval. So there is a change from SAP that they are actually ignoring the errors, which is good and bad. So I would say it's good because at least you allow the copy approvals to finish all of it, which is good. But don't take it like if you see errors during copy approval, just ignore it. No. Because if you see an error in copy approval, it means that change didn't get this label copied. When you go to 3.6, you won't see the same thing. And okay, that's very important. I was mentioning this one over breakfast. This was embarrassing, but we had this problem. So when we were doing an upload pack, we were loading all the metadata of all the changes in memory, all the times. So imagine that you have a repo with 10 million changes. I'm doing just a fetch. Oh, git fetch, is there anything for me? I'm loading 4 million changes. Okay. Is there anything for you? I'm loading 4 million changes. yeah, the CPU wasn't happy, right? And some guys on the mailing list say, what happens? I upgraded to 3.6 and blew up. Embarrassing, but we had this problem. Another 5 minutes with what's new, and then we'll go to some Q&A. We have breaking changes, unfortunately, because sometimes we have to, and this is because the GUI of Gerrit is going to a transition to lit. That is new. It's the replacement of the old Polymer, and it means, and also transition from JavaScript to TypeScript. There are other breaking changes. There is a REST API that has been there for ages in 2.14, and this has been removed in 3.16. And just mentioning what has been written in the comment message, removing this endpoint to simplify the logic submit rules as much as possible to use the migration to submit requirements. Done. And just telling you a warning that if you're using that API, it's not there anymore. And another thing that is being deprecated for, this one has been deprecated for years, and now we are removing it, is the assignee feature. Yeah, you can't use it anymore. But I believe there was someone on the mailing list say, how do I enable again the assignee in 3.6? And Ben will say, it's gone. Okay, but how can I get it back? It's gone. Yeah, but what's the configuration? It's gone. It's not there anymore. And the reason is because it was kind of conflicting a little bit on the way that the attention set works, and we couldn't continue supporting this kind of dual modes, right? And it's not there, so warning. And that's another big warning. So before 3.6, the project owner had automatically delete permissions on all refs, which was handy from some points of view, but dangerous, because you say, why someone remove the main branch? Nobody has permission to do that, but it was implicit. Now it needs to be done explicit. And the migration doesn't add it for you. So you need to add it, okay, if you really want to. And submit requirements. So in 3.6, you have this fantastic thing that is called submit requirements. I'm not going to talk about the details because it's going to be a talk per se, but I'm going to tell you, warning you, from when you start going to 3.6, start moving to submit requirements, because Prolog is still there, Prolog still works, but it's deprecated 3.6, it's deprecated 3.7, maybe will not be there in 3.8, I don't know. So get ready, get ready. There is no rush, because we know that lots of people use Prolog rules, but get ready for it, because it's going to disappear sooner or later. Maybe they will say will be removed in 4.0. I don't know. I need to check my crystal ball. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, that's something interesting. So we add the new events to the stream events. I'm telling you, even if you're not using it, because maybe you want to check if the Gerrit Trigger plugin doesn't blow up with this new event. Yeah. So because the new event that Gerrit Trigger plugin didn't expect. And that's a very important event, because Gerrit typically passed the stream events or the ref update, but the head update was not passed. It was a sort of a bug. But, you know, bug and features are dual. We can say is a I'm not commenting on that. And there is another performance improvement. There is a new cache. So Gerrit uses a templating mechanism for sending emails that is called SOI. Maybe it was a Japanese guy that did it, I don't know. But it was a Google guy, actually, that did it. And the process of the SOI templates was very expensive. Now, finally, we have a cache. So sometimes you have people that send a lot of emails. Maybe you do a bunch of reviews, send 1,000 emails. We're rendering the same template 1,000 times, which was not good. And let's move forward. That's very important. So from 3.6, we got the bump of Apache Min SSHD to 2.8, which is a very good news for two reasons. First, you never want to have a security product to be old, because it's not secure anymore, right? So there are more secure algorithms. But you need to be careful, because if your client side is not upgraded, you may have upgraded 3.6 Gerrit, and then you say, why my CI job is breaking now? Because maybe your client is not secure, doesn't support those algorithms. So check that your client and server, they support the same exchange of the algorithm. But more importantly, improves the thread safety with channel multiplexing. So in the SSH, if you ever use the SSH for replication with Gerrit, we don't mention in the documentation, but move away from it, because it's been a hell in the past years, right? The things are improving, but has not been reliable. How many people had problems with replication over SSH? And if you use multiplexing, it was breaking all the time because it was not thread safe. So there were a lot of contributions to the Apache Mina SSHD project. I believe, David, you did a lot of work, but also Thomas Wolf from JGit. And 2.8 contains some of the fixes, so it means it's more reliable. It's not bulletproof, but it's more reliable on 2.8. Okay, yeah, so the insecure algorithm, what David says, by default, they're not there. Test it. So don't activate it by default, because it's never a good idea to activate an insecure algorithm. Because at that point, you say, why don't you use Git protocol without SSH if you want to use an algorithm that is insecure? Yeah. But if you really have to, check with your security team, that is good. And then if they say, okay, they give you a mitigation period, in the meantime, you can enable it. But don't say, oh, I heard Luca say, use insecure algorithm, it's fine. No, don't use it. Go to more secure algorithm first. There are some UI improvements as well. So I don't know, people sometimes they have doubts of what labels do. You can have now the possibility to define new labels with their descriptions and their reasons, which is good. And there is basically some new configuration settings that you can define there. Very important. So with the submit requirements, because the submit requirements, they are based on search, there was a perfect opportunity to improve the search mechanism in Gerrit. Now you have also the ability to say count, which is really interesting. So many times on many lists, people said, how can I define a Prolog rule that says if two people do code review +1 is a +2? And people start to say, oh my gosh, so let me go back to the books in university, how Prolog works. Now, Gerrit 3.6, you say, count to 2, done. So it's really easy compared to what it was in Prolog. There are some updates on the highlight.js, that is the code syntax highlighting, UI, and now we go to 3.7. So the features before were 3.6. In 3.7, you go on more migration to lit, but I'm going to go quickly because there will going to be the UI guys talking extensively about that. And this is really important. On 3.7, how many people are looking at consolidating Gerrit servers with different server ID? You can do that now in 3.7, okay? I'm not going to talk about the details because they're going to be 45 minutes explaining you how to do it, yeah? But you can do it. And there is a new handy command that I don't know how we survive without it. That is a command to check if a user can access a project. Instead of chatting with him, oh, can you see the project now? No, okay, let me fix this. Can you see it now? No, you can check up front. So when you tell the guy that you can see the project, you know he can see the project. It's really useful for testing ACLs. And now let's go to the new features of 3.4, 3.5, because they are included in 3.6, 3.7, but they are worth mentioning. There are a lot of performance improvements on the caching side. So we discovered that when you disable a cache, Gerrit doesn't disable it. But if you set a cache to 0, Gerrit sets it to 1 and has a background thread that evicts it, which has huge implications because if you take 30 seconds to load the entry, you're locking. So this was a massive impediment to scalability. We fixed that in 3.4, so you don't have to upgrade if you want to have this massive performance improvement. We can cache repository locations. This was done by Qualcomm. It's really important because JGit takes an awful amount of time to understand that a repo is a repo. At least now it's cached. And I'm going to talk about the JGit improvements for large repositories in a talk I believe is this afternoon, no, tomorrow, how to wrestle with large repo. Lots of learnings were put back into the JGit and the open source project. There are lots of improvements on indexes. And this is really important. We made a metrics reservoir configurable. Maybe, I don't have time now, but maybe Poncho, when you talk about metrics, we can talk about this one as well. This is basically when you calculate the percentiles or the metrics. I don't know if you ever noticed that Gerrit was kind of flaky on that. If you have seen the replication metrics, they were kind of a flat line. And because it was not configurable, the type of reservoir. Now you can define the type of sliding time we want, or sliding samples is a lot better. So metrics are more meaningful now. And we did a lot of security fixes, though we always do on all releases security fixes. So first there was a leak on non-visible res, really serious. So whoever had the ability to create a branch could have discovered anything, just creating a branch, you see it. And the last one was the infamous no limit was allowed to anyone, including anonymous users. So anyone could have just made a no limit query to your Gerrit and kill it in 5 seconds, I believe. We did a small test. How long does it take to kill a site in GerritHub.io? 5 seconds. So they could have killed all our sites in 25 seconds. And any production system in 25 seconds, which was not good. It was really open door to DDoS or DOS, and this has been fixed. And just to mention that 3.4 is going end of life, and David Ostrowski is a change ready to be merged that removes all the 3.4 jobs from the CI. Don't run it because they need to archive first. But Java 8 is no longer supported, and from today, 3.4 is no longer supported by the community. But of course, I say if you want to support also old versions of Gerrit, talk to Cesare, it's still there. Yeah, for enterprise support.